Hello, everybody. It's Uncle Grumpy, and welcome to Grumpy Tonight. Tonight, we're joined by Adria Berry. Adria Berry's the new director of OMMA, the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority. Adria, first off, am I pronouncing your name right?
You are.
Good. Okay. Well, why don't you say hi to everybody, and let's get started.
Great. Well, thank you for having me on. And hello, everyone. I know that there have been four directors in 3 years. So I appreciate the opportunity to come on your show, Chris, and have the opportunity to speak directly to all your Facebook friends and podcast listeners. So thank you.
You know, you mentioned there's been four directors. I want to say this here at the beginning. Um, it's always been just about this easy for us to communicate with OMA directors. You guys have always been, the previous ones and yourself have always been, in our opinion, considerably more accessible than perhaps the narrative that's been out there. So I appreciate you doing this. I really do. I think this will, again, help everybody to understand you're not a big scary monster. And perhaps if they just reach out, you'll talk to them, and next thing you know, they'll get what they need. So, all right.
Great. Thank
Well,
you.
first, let me say we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, folks. This is going to be a fairly short one. Uh, Not because Miss Berry has things to do, but because I do. So she's made herself more than available for this. Unfortunately, some things in my life have caused me to rearrange my schedule a little bit. So we're not going to go as long as we normally would on the show. But because of what's going on tomorrow, I thought it extremely important that we at least get the conversation started and give you a chance to explain to everybody what's going on tomorrow, so that we don't see the same outrage in the community that we saw after the last meeting, which, by the way, was before your time. Let's start with the date of that. We talked previously, and I understand the date was something that was set beforehand. This was not a date you picked. So chances
Right.
are, Norma Sapp, who's on the board, and all the other board members that are meeting tomorrow have known about this meeting for quite some time. It was just I hadn't been paying enough attention. I wasn't aware of it. So why don't you go ahead and explain what the meeting is going to be about?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, when we were texting earlier and I said, yeah, let's make sure to talk about the Food Safety Standards Board meeting tomorrow. The reason why I said that is I want to make sure that everybody knows about it and that we are being as transparent as possible, because I do know that there have been issues with that in the past, and whether it was miscommunication or what the issue was, I don't know. As you said, I wasn't here then, but we do have a meeting tomorrow. It's going to be at 9 a.m. at the Capitol, and I'm going to put the agenda up on the screen so that everyone can see that and see what we're going to be talking about. So, as you'll see at the top, it is in room 230 at the Capitol, which is on the Senate side on the second floor. And there is some space for public to be present. Of course, we want to take into consideration wearing masks. It's not mandated, but just think through the public safety of it while we're all dealing with the COVID crisis. But we are going to discuss the minutes from that June meeting that was just brought up, and discuss appointing a chair, and then jump right into scroll down a bit, because we're going to jump right into some proposed emergency rules that relate back to legislation passed during this past legislative session. So we will also talk about the permanent rules. And this all gets, to me, it gets a little bit uh, wonky, because, we're doing emergency and proposed at the same time. And really, it's just an issue of timing because of the way we have to send permanent rules through the legislature to be approved. We need to do that now. There will be a public comment period in November, and I'm going to pull up the exact dates right now. But there will be a public comment period where you can submit comments online. You can submit comments by phone, email, letter, however you want to do it. But there will also be an opportunity to come to the Capitol and give your public comments in person, and
Okay,
that
okay.
will be
Let me ask a question.
go
Sorry
ahead.
to interrupt. These
Mhm.
you're talking about in addressing the permanent rules, which, if I'm not mistaken, you'll put out tomorrow. What you suggest they be? Will there be this public comment period you're talking about, and then it will go to the legislator next session for them to vote on it to become permanent rules. Is that how this is going to work?
Correct.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Okay. So tomorrow you'll be addressing both emergency rules, which are rules you've come up with in the past that are already set in the books, but have not gone through the legislature yet. Is that correct?
Well, these are new emergency rules to address the legislation that's going into effect November 1. So that House Bill 2646 that passed this past session, it goes
Hmm.
into effect November 1, and we have to have our rules matching up
Okay.
with that legislation. And so because of the timing, we have to do it via emergency rule. But then that will also be part of our permanent rules that the legislature looks at and has oversight over in the next session. Um,
Well, that
but
makes sense because they passed it last session. You've now got to make it, implement it, and then send it back for them to make permanent,
correct.
right?
Yeah. Yes. It's a
Okay.
little, yeah. Our rulemaking process in Oklahoma is all over the place, and I have to keep basically a checklist and a bullet point list next to me just to make sure I even understand what I'm talking about. But we have public comment November 1st is when it opens, and then it'll close December 1st with the opportunity for folks to come in December 1st, I believe it is. Let me pull it up again. Yes, December 1st to make an in-person comment if you'd like at the Capitol. We will put all of this out there. It'll be on our social media. We'll make sure we're
Right.
sending out information. We're being completely open about this. I think that that's key. At the end of the day, what I'm seeing is that we have got to be all working together. And I know that there are different factions within the industry, and you all are working on how to come together more. I think as a voice of the industry, and truly that's helpful for us at the OMMA so that we can work with you all and not feel like it's a surprise as I look into what's happened over the past couple of years and see people feel like they're being surprised by rules or legislation. I hope that we can improve on our communication moving forward.
Let me ask you about some of that. You mentioned over the last couple of years, and we'll get back to what's going to be discussed in tomorrow's meeting in a second. But could you just take a minute and explain to everybody? I know that when you were first announced as the new head of OMMA, we all saw some quotes going around. I spoke with Dr. Pasternak. You know Lawrence, a good friend
Yes.
of mine,
Mhm.
colleague at the Oklahoma Cannabis Liberty Alliance, and he had mentioned having these conversations with you, and that this was what you were doing for your client. And as a lawyer, you must speak for your client. Why don't you? I want to hear it from you. Tell everybody what you meant in that quote, and again, I don't even have it in front of me because I understand it wasn't important enough for me to pull up because I felt like it's what you were supposed to say at the time and you were doing your job. But I want to give you the chance to address it, so please do.
Sure, I'm happy to, and thank you for the opportunity. Yes, I do know Dr. Pasternak, and I met him before 788 passed because he asked me to come out and speak at a forum out in Edmond, where I basically debated with Bud Scott and a couple of other folks. We all were speaking about the merits of the actual language of the state question. And even back then, the news bites that were not picked up, where every time I was in person, I was saying, I think medical marijuana obviously has medicinal benefits. Doctors say that. So why would we debate against the use of medical marijuana? My job, though, was to point out some of the holes that we saw. I worked for the state chamber, which is a business organization. So my job was to point out some of the holes that we saw in the language of 788 that were going to potentially create some issues that businesses saw coming. But it was never about and I was never personally anti-medical marijuana, but also neither was the state chamber, neither was my client. We really wanted to actually work with the legislature to see if there was a way to create a program that kind of had some of those holes filled in. So some of the regulatory holes that we see, some of the growing pains that OMMA has gone through in the past 3 years, if some of those had been addressed on the front side, it could have gone a little smoother, but we can't change the way we started. I mean, 788 passed. It is what it is. I completely 100% accept that and live in the same world as everyone else. But what we can do is look at what still needs to improve and move forward and focus on those things. So no, I do not want to shut down the use of medical marijuana in Oklahoma. No, I don't think that there should be I don't think that there should be barriers for patients to get medical marijuana that they need for their medical treatment. So if those are the questions people have, I'm 100% open and upfront with the fact that I support the use of medical marijuana as it is used in
Okay,
Oklahoma.
and let me ask one more question. I like to ask this sometimes, and I don't want you to get so personal that, in other words, I don't want you to tell me whether you do or not. Okay, and I don't want you to tell me whether your husband does or not. I just want to ask you a very generic question. Do you know anybody in your family or close friends that find the need for medical marijuana?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right. That's all I need to know. I appreciate that. Okay, let's get back to tomorrow. I noticed on that thing you just put up, and let's put it back up for just a minute. I was
Sure.
looking at that time. This is a 8 hour event. You
It
guys are going to make a
is.
day of it. It's like a full time job.
Let me make sure I'm sharing correctly. I'm going through my technology problems again. Just 1 second, Chris. Sorry about that. Do people call you Chris or do I call you Uncle Grumpy?
Well,
What do I
they
call
actually
you?
most people call me Grumpy, at least especially
Okay,
after they
Grumpy.
spend some time with me.
Grumpy. Okay.
But you can call me whatever you want, either one.
Okay. So what would you like to look at while I have it up on the screen? Yes, it is going to be, we have the room until 4:30, so it will be an all day thing.
Okay, so I just, like I said, I just wanted to see it up here again, give everybody a chance to glance at it. Maybe,
Sure.
um, what do you see as what will be? Is there anything you see will be as hot topics tomorrow? Is there anything that's um, rubbing people the wrong way that you're already aware of?
Oh, I know that we were put in a position to put into the rules. Basically, we were put in a position by the legislature to put into rules some guidelines around final product testing. And so we brought in some folks from the industry to talk to us about what that means. Um, but that's a topic I think we need to have more discussion around tomorrow so that we make sure we're hearing what the industry and um, everyone involved with the medical marijuana program in Oklahoma think about that one.
Yeah, that should be interesting because that's a topic that's come up a lot among the groups that are working on petitions as well. Is
Okay,
changing the legislation. I'm sure you know, you're aware, I'm sure, that ORCA has been working on a couple petitions.
correct. Yes, I have been. I've been told about those. Yes, and I do know one of the people involved in that, Jed Green. We know each other back from when I worked at the state chamber, and so I have heard about that. Yes.
Okay. All right. Go ahead and drop that down again if you don't mind. And
Sure.
we're just going to go a few more minutes here. I want to recap tomorrow. It's at 9 o'clock at the Capitol. Now, this is going to stream live, is it not?
Correct. So just like when the legislature's in session and you can log in and watch, or not log in, but click on a specific committee room and watch the committee hearing, it'll be the exact same thing. You just need to find room 230 at the Capitol and you can watch it all day.
Okay. And so I guess you'll be there all day, huh?
Correct. Yeah.
But this won't be something for public comment, though, right? This will be, if they want to go, they're going to be listening, right?
Right. Tomorrow is not the public comment time. It's a time for the board to advise us on what they think about these rules. Now, that
Okay.
doesn't mean
Let,
that they're in
let me
final
ask,
form.
okay, I'm sorry. Let me ask you this. How long have they been looking at those rules that you're going to ask them about tomorrow?
They just got them in their final draft form on Friday. So they've had this weekend to look over them.
So, unless I'm mistaken, this is the exact same problem that everybody had with the last meeting, was that these temporary rules were put out at that time. I think it was the night before. It may have been a couple of days before, but they were given almost no time, and then they were asked what they thought about these, and even what they said were their concerns were not addressed. Are we just walking through the steps again? How's tomorrow going to be different?
Yeah, I think your questions are valid, and I'll let you know that this past week, as I've seen the process to get prepared for this meeting tomorrow, um, I have determined that the process will absolutely change. We cannot do this way. And as you said, I wasn't involved in the June meeting, but I've heard the uproar and I've heard what people are upset about. And I do think that we're kind of repeating the past here. But one thing that we've got to do, number one, is get staff in that focuses solely on the rules, and that's all they do, so that we're not rushing to get these out 2 days before a meeting. We do not have all the staff in place that we need to have, and that I've been focusing on trying to formulate this staff up plan so that we have the right people in place in the right seats that I can trust to be doing this year round, so that we're not rushed. But also, I think the transparency piece, we have a lot of room for improvement on that at OMMA. Like, just getting out and making sure that folks know what we're doing is imperative. So
Okay, so I can already see you're going to catch a lot of heat this week, and that's unfortunate. So to try
yeah,
and ease some of that heat, let me ask you this, okay? Because again, this was all set up pre you in the position you're in. So, and I don't want to see you burn for something you didn't even do before you've had a chance to do what you want to do. So let me just ask you very specifically: are these meetings happening every month? Is that the plan?
no, I believe they're quarterly. I
Okay,
believe they're
so
quarterly meetings. Yeah.
for the next meeting that you will have set up, that you will have been in charge of from the beginning, that you will have laid all out, how do you want to see it laid out? What is your intention so that you can address what they're going to complain about tomorrow right now and get ahead
Yeah.
of it?
Yeah. Well, and actually, our next meeting will come after November 1. And November 1 is the day that we get to actually expand the board because of House Bill 2646. So, my plan is to ask folks like you and your organization and all the other organizations to help identify the gaps on the board so that we have the correct people in the seats, because we'll be able to put about, I think, 6 more people on the board to be in the room. So we need to identify who needs to be in the room next time, number one, as far as on the board. But number two, absolutely getting out and communicating much earlier. But number three, we should not have a need for emergency rules at the next meeting. It should truly just be a kind of looking forward and looking ahead towards a legislative session, discussing the upcoming needs. But what we have to do looking forward, I mean, how other agencies do it, what we have to do is be much more upfront, be much more prepared, so that everyone in the community knows that every September we're going to have these rules that we need to discuss, because that's just the timeline. That's how it works after legislative session. In September, we're going to be looking at our rules to implement what the legislature just did if the bill goes into effect November 1. So just kind of get on a regular schedule of communication with everyone, like, okay, it's that time again. We need to sit down and talk about these. But engagement with I know that's kind of a buzzword, but talking to everyone involved is paramount. And I'll tell you, my plan is that as I come in, and I've only been here 2 weeks, but I'm going to be kind of putting out a plan at 30 days and then a follow-up at 60 days as far as what moving forward is going to look like for OMMA. And
Okay,
that's not to
so
throw, go
and
ahead.
hold on a second. So in this particular case, to address my particular question, at the next time when you're in charge of everything and this board or whatever board is there is looking at rules, in your mind they need to have seen these things for at least 30 days before you're asking them their opinion on it. Would that be right?
So if you're saying, will they be able to see the rules 30 days before? I think that's 30 days is, I don't know if that's the standard with other agencies. I'd like to check and see how long, I mean, 2 weeks maybe, but I'm happy to follow up with you once I have a plan on that.
Okay.
Because really, I think the standard could be potentially, a week, 2 weeks to look into the language. But someone like DEQ, when they're making their rules, or all these other agencies that have been doing this forever, it we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We need
Right,
to see
right.
what's
But
been
and let's keep
working.
in mind though, let me throw this out there. When you do look into that information, let's keep in mind that these board members are not paid. So they all have lives. That's different. If they were paid people, you could ask them, you could tell them, "Hey, here's the rules. We want a 1 week turnaround." But because they're not paid people, you just keep that in mind when you're looking at how different agencies do it. See, maybe if they're not paid, they get longer. I would think they would.
Okay, I think that's a great point, and I'm glad you pointed that out.
All right. Well, again, we need to wrap this up because I do have some things that I need to do, and this is on me, not on you. I hope everybody understands that. You've made yourself plenty available. In fact, your assistant has messaged me almost every day last week trying to pin me down on things, and I've been the one who's fallen short here, not you. And again, life is what happens when you make plans. My life, no different than anybody else's, happens even when I'm making plans. So, but I would like to ask you to come back. I'm sure there'll be some fallout from tomorrow. Again, you acknowledge that it's going to be somewhat repetitive from the last time, and everybody already knows they don't like that. But I think you've done a good job here of explaining how you would have done it different and how you're aware of the repetitiveness here. So I think we can expect better from you than what's happened. So I look forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to even, come have this conversation. I do want to talk to you again, and hopefully, yes, hopefully we can get past the fallout and look forward to positive changes.
Great. All right, you stay right there, and I'm gonna get us off here. All right, folks. Again, tomorrow 9 to 4:30, and you can see this online. If you go to the Capitol, please keep in mind the COVID restrictions or suggestions and all that stuff. You can watch. You won't get a chance to comment. Public comments, as she said, on these rules won't be until November. But just keep an eye right here on the OCNN. We will get her back on again when we've got a little bit more time and we can get into some of this in depth. And when you've had a little longer time to get your feet planted in your new position, and I bet you'll have even more information for us. All right, folks, that's it for now. Until next time, stay grumpy. I'll see you on the road.